I would like to present today a little bit of more than a project, but the background of the historical background of the project and how important has it been for me during the course of these years. I was graduated almost 20 years ago from Middle East Technical University, a place which meant a lot to me. It constitutes a very important part of me as an architect, which now, after 20 years, I look at myself and I really almost cannot recognize after the day I graduated. For sure, I am so proud of all the experiences and the deep thoughts, but the course of the years have taught me that how flexible and how like a sponge we as creatures are to absorb knowledge and to be always reflective towards a certain path that we would like to follow. During these years, me and the office that me and my wife are leading have had the pleasure to and have had have been honored to be recognized in different awards and being published in different magazines, works that we have been leading and sometimes have been collaborating with other offices. Ballie Mosque is one of these, and Faith Park is one of these, a park where interreligious harmony is praised, is celebrated in Albania in one of the most important axes. But all of these works come not only as a product of one person or two, these are a product of a whole team that we have the pleasure to lead. This is how we believe every work is a product of a huge collaboration. But in all our works, we as architects actually feel that are privileged to work for the celebration of beauty. It is important for every artist, actually. But if we try to understand or try to look from a new perspective, from a Sufi perspective, the human genesis of creation, according to Sufi view, was to celebrate beauty. Not only to look for it, but to cultivate it in order to find the right path and the purpose of life. So this is a totally different view and a totally different perspective of the role of aesthetics / beauty in architecture and our privilege as professionals to work for this. So, according to this perspective, we not only are guided to seek, but also to cultivate it. So at Common Sense Studio, the studio that we lead, we do not see architecture as merely an expression of form or materials or colors. But we try to look at it as a balance between some dichotomies in order to look for the purpose of our work. And These dichotomies may sometimes be very elevated in terms how to approach to terrestrial topics, how to give it a celestial meaning, how to create connection in the physical world, or to create a metaphysical condition in a certain work. What is the role of the individual in our work, and what is the benefit of the society? How to look as a part to something, or as a whole within a set of rules that is larger than ourselves. For sure, understanding the context is important for us, and we try tools like observation from a more rationalistic view, or experience. Now, experience is a word that I would like to spend a little more time, because it is an integral part of our process. How to experience the space, how to go through it. But interestingly, the word experience, when we go to its roots in the Greek, it's more connected to aesthetic than we have ever thought. Today, for example, we think of aesthetic as something beautiful, and the opposite of something beautiful is something ugly. But aesthetic actually is much more close to experience. If you think anesthetic, anesthesia, is not to feel, because aesthetic is close to feeling, to perceiving. So feeling is closer to the beautiful, to the beauty. If we don't feel, if we don't feed our emotional capacities to feel and to perceive through our experience, most probably we will be numb. We will lose the ability to look for the beauty and probably for the right path. So we believe that experience is an important part and can be a means to the purpose of one's work, and if this work is the meaning of life. And that's how we at Common Sense believe that architecture is a means to truth or purpose beyond the realization of a project. And the truth or the purpose is deeply connected with our existence and our role in the society. Many academics have delved on and have worked on the role of experience and the senses in architecture. Juhani Palasma is a Finnish architect, academic, and his book, The Eyes of the Skin, he approaches to the abilities of human beings to perceive the space as a whole, not as made of parts. We do not perceive one thing holistically only by seeing, or only by touching, or smelling. We use all our senses in order to understand it properly. He talks about the multisensorial perception as an important part for architects. I would like to read, in order to extend a little bit this view, to read a poem by Rumi, Jalaluddin Rumi. It's called The Elephant in the Dark. Some Hindus have an elephant to show. No one here has ever seen an elephant. They bring it at night to a dark room. One by one, we go in the dark and come out, saying how we experience the animal. One of us happens to touch the trunk. A water pipe kind of creature, he says. Each of us touches one place and understands the whole in that way. If each of us held a candle there, and if we went in together, we could see it. I cut it a little bit short. But this is exactly what happens with ourselves. If we diminish what in the last 200 years we reduced our capacity only to a certain way of understanding through the faculty of the mind only, and closing doors that are integral part of human beings. So Rumi teaches us that the source can be expressed in many different ways. And there is a collective way of understanding beauty and truth differently. I have called it is the wholeness of existence. And reflecting on the importance of this, I would like just to add another view from an artistic point of view, from Cézanne, the famous French painter, who is considered as the father of modern painting. And Cézanne says that it is very difficult to distinguish one feature of an object from another. For example, it's very difficult, according to Cézanne, to say that I am using the red color on this painting. What do you mean by red? Do you mean the red of an apple or the red of a strawberry? Do you mean the green of a certain vegetable or the green of a certain grass, a fruit? So it is very difficult to distinguish features from one another because our perception is more holistic. And can you imagine, for example, according to Cézanne, he says, what if you could smell the texture, or you could shape, or the shape of a taste? How would you think if you'd like to draw the shape of a watermelon? These are a little bit, has been very provocative at the time, but they come at a time where discussion still was in the, from the architectural perspective, was in the beginning of a very revolutionary period, the beginning of the modernity, where the so-called the delusion of humanism takes place. Because with the arrival of modernity in architecture, approaches became mostly based on the rational aspect. So wholeness, perception, experience, emotions, feelings, or the brain of the heart were concepts much refused and mainly reduced to a more rationalistic way. It was never part of these discussions for the modernity, and as opposed to the city of participation, the medieval cities, we were introduced with models proposed from top to bottom, which has had very bad effects in certain cities around the world, coming up with the so-called city of isolation, according to Palasma. These are not my terms. These are drawings of Le Corbusier, one of the most important architects of the previous century. And this is the radiant city, the futuristic city, the productive city around technology with the machine at the center. But other urban planners have been critical. Here we have a drawing by Jan Gehl, a very renowned Danish urbanist, where he criticizes the modern way by creating spaces with the people at the center. And producing a more vivid, a more connected environment by not trying to create isolation in the community. This is a picture from Tirana, from the times where we had one of the harshest regimes in the world, probably during the 50s. This is the boulevard, main boulevard, and at the end is the Casa del Fascio, a building from the fascist times. And you see the monument of the boulevard and the reduction of people, how out of scale, how lost they seem. And this is a pattern with pictures from Tirana, where people, after the fall of communism, with their own initiative, without having a set of rules, in a spontaneous way, they converted all their ground floor living areas, bedrooms turned into cafes or to Barbary, to different kind of services to the city. Something similar, actually, as you have here in Beyoğlu. But imagine this happening in a short period of time, like in 5 years, and throughout all the city. This is the context, how before it, how Ballie Mosque took place and how it faced the conditions of the period that it used to live. Ballie Mosque was an old mosque built in the 17th century. But after a certain period, as I will explain later, it had to follow one of the worst tragedies that architecture landscape has faced in Albania. Before that, I would like to talk a little bit about the context, where Albania was after the Second World War. Actually, Albania is a very small country, one of the latest countries to receive independence from the Ottoman Empire, but is one of the very few countries after the French Revolution era to have built its own national identity, not only related to one religion. In Albania, we have heterogeneous societies in many cities, in all the parts. Muslims, be Sunni or Bektashi, Christians, Orthodox, Catholics, mostly, and Protestant lately. And many of these scholars representing these religions have led the national movement towards the independence of the country. They have been active players in one of the most important national events of the Republic of Albania. These people, that's why the creation of the nation of Albania owes a great debt to the interreligious collaboration. And it's of no surprise that you would find a picture like this with a mosque, a Catholic and an Orthodox church close to one another. But after Second World War, a harsh version of communism was imposed to this small country in the middle of Europe. And under the propaganda of erasing the past, the tradition, and building the new modern man, they created a hyper-rational society which would not anymore recognize the spirit and would persecute its followers. The execution of this new agenda took place in a very extreme way by imprisoning thousands of religious clerics, practitioners, executing to death, and hundreds of them who did not choose to deny their God, putting a terror to a nation that had always surpassed these religious differences. On the other hand, they were always united for the greater Albanian cause. So in 1967, we call it a dark year, Albania declared itself as the first atheistic republic in the world. While dictators' monuments were rising, God's monuments were falling. It is under these circumstances that the old Ballie Mosque, which was one of the most important ones in Albania, due to its very articulated details, was demolished to the last stone. Its demolition actually is considered one of the gravest damages caused to the Islamic architecture and heritage in our country. But mosques everywhere in the world, like churches, and like many other religious buildings, like the one that we are here, have always been considered as centers and sources of civilizations, where new, innovative ideas have been applied, both artistically and in technological terms. So they were seen as inspiring spaces for the community and for artists and architects. This was the discussion that we had when we were asked to design the new mosque at the same place. And exactly we tried to follow the same principles, to create a mosque that would possibly be, hopefully be, a place of inspiration. In the beginning, there was a huge discussion, and the first requests were to bring a replica of an Ottoman model. And we opened the discussion. Why would we choose to have a replica in the first place, while we know that the most important mosques and churches have always been so creative in their solutions? How would we feel so proud after centuries if we would be following exactly the same solutions that the others before us had given 400 years before us? Even great exemplary architects like Mimar Sinan, they did not replicate themselves. In all of his solution, he has always been original, trying to challenge the meaning of space in order to create the unity, what he was looking forward. And he created that at Selimiye Mosque. But what was the most important thing is that actually we did not find any trace of the old mosque. Only very few pictures, no drawings at all, not any stone. So it would be very sincere to us to bring in a new project. We did not have the knowledge how the old mosque was built, the technical abilities, the craftsmen, the materials. So we really considered not appropriate and would be more confident to interpret the spirit of time in order to create under the principles of the religion, a metaphysical space where people worship their God and find a peace within their heart. Nevertheless, in my very first sketches, I remember myself not presenting a mosque with a dome or with a minaret. We received very harsh critics, and it was a kind of a compromise to accept the importance and to understand the historical, the sociological effects on a community, and we preferred to interpret both these elements in a new way, with the new materials, with the new knowledge that we know. So, before that, we try to understand the uniqueness of the project, a project that had had its own fate in different times. And time is an important aspect in Islam. There is a verse in Quran with a name of time. And according to some sayings, Prophet says that if only this verse was revealed to him, that would be enough. And that would be enough to replace the whole book. So we tried to delve upon this concept and tried to understand the importance of how time can transmit messages to one person and how it can make a believer reflect the passing of time. And we tried to induce a human-creator connection through it by bringing a place which would be detached from the surroundings. And we tried to make a call to inward as a reply to the outward attention that the contemporary world is always challenging the believer. So the indirect light and the absence of its source, the concept of impermanence and enhancing the feeling of passing time has been the main drivers in our project. Through the use of geometry as a tool that has never been exhausted in Islamic civilization, the main materials of the facade, the main elements such as facade, actually the dome and minaret, are interpreted geometrically in a new way. The materials were selected carefully to create the sense of the temporary, to invite people, to invite them to remind that they are temporary in relation to this world. And the main relation is the one, the permanent one, the divine one. So such choices were the selection of wood under the dome, which in collaboration with light creates a sense of intimacy, or marble in the facade, which is timeless, does not tire through time. And copper, actually, in the dome, which becomes more dignified through the passing of years. These are some drawings. The plans, the mosque is laid in 3 different plans. It has praying spaces for believers in 2 floors, and an underground floor for services and for rooms for administration. The total construction area of the mosque is about 1,800 square meters. Beside, it can host up to 1,700 believers at the same time. Together with the outdoors, it can reach up to more than 4,000 people. Today, it stands beside Scampa Theater, one of the most important artistic art buildings in the city. It has an open space in front of it, and it lies in front of the castle, which is of the Roman period. "55 years after the last prayer of the old Ballie Mosque, the citizens could pray again on the same place, but under a different shelter this time, hopefully timelessly." Thank you.